It was early springtime and the strike was on. It drove us miners out of doors, out from the houses that the company owned. We moved into tents up at old Ludlow.
On April 20th, 1914, Colorado militiamen destroyed the Ludlow tent colony and proceeded to loot and set fire to it. The Ludlow Massacre and the Colorado Coalfield Wars from 1913 to 1914 were the catalyst of change in Colorado's and the United States labor laws. But before all this occurred, in 1879, General Palmer built a steel mill in Pueblo and set up a railroad system for what is now Denver to what is now Pueblo. This made Pueblo a main artery of steel and coal for the United States. Then, in 1892, John Osgood's Fuel Company and General Palmer's Iron Company merged together to create the Colorado Fuel and Iron Company, or CF&I. After John D. Rockefeller Jr. took over CF&I, he hired Lamont Bowers as his distance manager. In September of 1913, Ludlow miners met with the United Mine Workers of America, and they agreed to strike. The CF&I called upon the Colorado State Militia to stop the striking miners, so no damage would be done to either side. The new and cruel management of CF&I inflicted unfair treatment towards the miners, so they demanded the following: recognition of unit strikes, the pay would be 10% advance in wages of tonnage rates, that the work hours per day would be 8 hours, that they would be paid for extra work, that they elect their own checkaway man, that they have the right to trade at any store they please, and that they have the ability to enforce Colorado mining laws on the notorious and corrupt guarding systems. Instead, the militia terrorized and harassed the miners by setting up machine gun posts. Tensions grew between the two until the Colorado National Guard was sent in to protect the militia. Unfortunately, on April 21st, 1913, the first shots were fired and light shooting was exchanged until the National Guard fired their machine guns at will, only pausing to reload. Then, the National Guard and the militia charged into the colony and beat the strikers. Lastly, they poured kerosene onto the tent colony and set it ablaze, suffocating 2 women and 11 children hiding in a hole underneath one of the tents. A total of 20 people died at Ludlow. After the war, the U.S. Army proceeded to disarm the militia, the National Guard, and the miners. They then discharged the sheriff and other officials responsible for the atrocities. John D. Rockefeller Jr. tried to soothe tensions and violence afterwards by installing a YMCA and a baseball field, but this failed to help. Fortunately, labor laws changed as a result of the Ludlow Massacre. Unfortunately, the change was slow and did not occur until 1935, when the previous labor laws were changed to the current 8-hour workday, free trade outside of camp, fair wages, better housing, and extra work pay. But what if the Ludlow Massacre wouldn't have happened? Where would our stance be in today's world in accordance with labor laws? I'm here with Victoria Miller, the museum curator of Steelworks Center of the West Museum in Pueblo, Colorado, to describe what my life would be like without Ludlow in the Colorado Coalfield Wars.
Workers definitely would not have any workers' rights whatsoever. In today's world, in 2017, if you're an American worker, you have a lot more rights. For example, if I get hurt when I'm at work, my employer will pay for me to go to the doctor to find out what the injury is. I can also go to the hospital if the need comes up because of the injury that I sustained while I was at work.
In my interview through email with Thomas G. Andrews, author of the book Killing for Coal, I asked how the Colorado Coalfield Wars and the Ludlow Massacre affected Colorado and the United States labor laws. He answered back, quote, "The strike, though, also revealed some of the shortcomings of the Colorado labor laws. Several of the demands made by the United Mine Workers of America at the start of the strike, after all, centered on matters that should already have been covered by Colorado statutes. The 1913 mining law prohibited against firing upon unions simply because they belonged to a labor organization, and so forth." End quote. In my interview with Victoria Miller, curator of the Steelworks Center of the West Museum, I asked, how did the miners take a stand in history?
Well, the miners, especially that worked for CF&I, they definitely took a stand in having a say in their working conditions. In September of 1913, they had had enough of the way that they were treated at work. And they got together and they said, we really need to see some changes in our working conditions. And so they took a stand with the CF&I management to make changes to their working conditions. Other types of jobs in other professions saw what the miners were up to, and they also made a lot of changes to their working conditions in other types of professions following the strike.
Again, I asked Thomas G. Andrews, how do you think that the Carlisle Coalfield Wars and the Ludlow Massacre should have had a larger, more visible presence in Carlisle and even American history? He answered by stating, Carlisle Coalfield Wars and the Ludlow Massacre also illustrated several important and larger themes. The miscarriage of justice, the often violent impacts of fossil fuel developments for people throughout America's energy-producing hinterlands, and the ongoing struggle of working Americans for dignity, justice, and prosperity. End quote. In my interview with Victoria Miller, I asked, what events prior to the Ludlow Massacre led up to the massacre itself?
As I mentioned before, the workers had very few rights, if any. They were forced to live in company-owned housing. The working hours were incredible. Like I said, they worked 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. The pay that they got was better than in some mining communities in the eastern part of the country, but it still was not a great deal of money. Miners also, especially in CF&I's mining camps, they were paid not in regular United States money, but they were paid in what is called scrip. And scrip is not United States currency. It's kind of like company-issued credit. And the problem with the credit is you could only spend it in the company-owned store that was in the town. And the store keeper was not a miner himself. He was a company official. So he could very easily overinflate the price of the goods in the store. And then the miner was basically just working to pay off his debt to the store. He would never get ahead. So that was another problem that the miners had. So they wanted to be paid in regular United States money, not in scrip.
The UMWA erected the Ludlow Monument, and it is now recognized as a national monument. A special thank you to Thomas G. Andrews, author of the book Killing for Coal, and Victoria Miller, the museum curator of Steelworks Center of the West Museum.
We took some cement and walled a cave up where you killed these 13 children inside. I said, God bless the Mine Workers Union. Then I hung my head and cried.